Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and in just over 24 hours of me recording this, it's going to be time for another Ludum Dare. Ludum Dare, or Ludum Dare if you prefer, is a weekend-long game programming competition. Actually, it's two competitions in one. There's a 72-hour jam, which is kind of a little bit more relaxed. You can have multiple people working in it. You can use existing assets, that sort of thing. But the real core, the root of Ludum Dare, and certainly the one that I participate in, is the 48-hour compo, in which you have to make a game on your own with no pre-existing assets whatsoever. It is incredibly fun, and I always live stream the whole thing. If you haven't seen it before, definitely make sure to come out to twitch.tv/Quilly18 this weekend. We always have an incredibly good time. I do sleep, but other than that, I basically stream the whole thing. The theme gets announced at 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Friday evening, and then we will have until 9 p.m. Eastern Time on Sunday evening to make this game. And I will be working on my own, but it is, to me, the real joy of this competition is the interaction on Twitch while we make the game. People asking questions about programming, talking about game design, actually talking about all kinds of things. 48 hours are a really, really, really long time. People usually come up with really funny names for the games in the chat. That sort of thing. Tons of people participate. The last few competitions have all had well over 2,000 entries each. That's 2,000 complete games submitted to this contest. And then afterwards, everyone who participated, everyone who uploaded a game, can then vote on each other's games, and the best game wins. And it's a huge prize. It's an epic prize. It is exactly zero. Nothing. There is no prize whatsoever for winning, other than, I don't know, just glory and the confidence of knowing that you are really good at making computer games. It is wonderful. That's one of the reasons it's, kind of relaxed. How do you prove that someone didn't use a pre-existing asset? Well, you can't. So, it doesn't really matter. There's no money on the line. There's nothing like that. So it's a competition about the joy of programming. And every language, any kind of thing you want to use is allowed. We had some really quirky entries in the past where people basically, for the minimalism theme, actually just basically submitted a series of GIFs, which was really funny, really interesting take on making the game. I've seen more than one person literally make a real life board game basically on paper and then submit sort of like the PDF of the rules and stuff like that. Why not? What the heck? Of course, most of it is actual computer games, which is the main point of this. A lot of people use Unity, which is what I will continue to be using because I enjoy working on it quite a bit and allows me to focus on the gameplay itself as opposed to writing yet another library for displaying a bitmap to a frame buffer or something of that nature. So yeah. So come and join us. Usually the stream starts a little bit before the actual stream announcement, typically by 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Usually the stream will be live, at least in some context. It might just be the pre-stream music, or I might be on screen talking at that point. And certainly for the last 30 minutes, we'll be fully live for sure as we count down and try to decide, hey, what theme would we like to see as the winner, for example. So yeah, coming out to there, it's gonna be a real blast. No idea what's gonna happen. No idea what the theme is gonna be, so we don't know where it's gonna go. What I'm gonna do is I'm first gonna take a look at all my previous games from previous Ludum Dares here. Let me embiggen this. We're gonna look at that, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna look at the themes, the final themes for this potential round here. One of these themes will be the theme of the competition. And right now people are voting. Everyone who has an account over on ludumdare.com can vote on this, and you can too, actually. Even if you might not participate, although ideally it's the people who participate do this. By the way, if you have any desire ever to have ever made a game, go and participate. Even if you only got a couple hours and you're not really a good programmer, make the simplest little thing you can do. The joy that you will feel from actually finishing a game is really unbeatable. A lot of people, anyone creative, everyone who is creative in some way, there's this thing that happens where you start a million projects and never finish a single one. Well, this, by putting such a strict time limit on you, forces you to finish. After 48 hours, or 72 if you're doing that version, after 48 hours, you're done. You have a complete game. Whether it had all the things you wanted or not, at some point you have to say, okay, it's finished. And for me, I try to mostly put in all the features Friday evening and then Saturday during the day, and Sunday is when more of the polish goes in, more graphics, sound effects, user interface, game balance, that sort of thing. And really, as I get closer and closer to that end date, at that end time, it comes down to, okay, I'm going to call the game done now. There's always more stuff. A game is never finished. It is simply released, is a famous saying, but you should participate. And I really hope to encourage more people to participate in any kind of game jam, but I really enjoyed Ludum Dare a lot. I think the spirit of it is really fantastic. So, yes, we're going to come back to these themes in a bit. So, every person on the Ludum Dare site has their About page, which lists all their games that they have done. You can see I've done 13 games in the past, and this will be the 14th time in a row since I started Ludum Dare. Since I first heard about Ludum Dare, I have not missed a single one. And when we get to Time Hack, you're going to find out like exactly the trouble I go through to ensure that we don't miss a single one. So the very first game, oh, by the way, each one of these games here is the best game I have ever made, and I'll tell you why. Paper Town is the best game I ever made because it's the first game I ever made. This is the first time I actually completed a full game. This is also the first time I'd ever really worked in Unity. At this point, Unity was still relatively new and unknown on the block. Wasn't really, like, it hadn't hit the sort of mega hype sort of public awareness that it's got now, certainly. And there wasn't quite as many resources for it at the time. It was still early days. This was during Unity 3. I mean, they gotten up and running, but it was still like a little bit, of an unknown. And so I certainly didn't know about this. I wasn't experienced in C#. I hadn't really done a lot of stuff in 3D programming. And so this was a new thing where we learned a lot of stuff. And one thing with this is every single thing in this game is simply a Unity primitive, right? The cubes, the spheres, the capsule shapes that you can get in Unity without any external 3D program. It's all in there. I really also like it quite a bit because it's by far, I think, my most sort of like, I don't know, it's got sort of a psychological story. I was really trying to set a tone and a mood. And I think of all the games I've ever made, this is actually the one with the strongest sort of theme and tone. The theme for this competition, for Ludum Dare, what was this one? 22, was Alone. And that was the idea of this game. And I don't know if it's still playable. I don't even know if these links are still live. Nope. Unfortunately not. I might still have another copy somewhere. I have no idea. But I really liked it. The music for it was me playing the harmonica, and then I slowed it down by like 300%. So it's like really like sort of low sort of droning sound, which I think fit the moodiness well. There was a day-night cycle, and at night sort of things would sort of chase you, and there was a bit of a story going on. Anyway, I really, really enjoyed this game. I mean, it wasn't necessarily very highly rated, of course, because it was relatively simple graphics and simple gameplay. But I was so happy to have figured all this out. And this was also, this was before I was streaming regularly. This stream of Ludum Dare was one of the very first streams that I'd done. I dabbled a little bit here and there, but I certainly didn't do any weekly stream. And a 48-hour stream was just crazy. And I don't remember, we were hitting, maybe peak concurrent users at the time was 100, maybe a couple hundred, something like that. So it was kind of like, and we got that throughout the whole weekend, which was pretty nuts. Anyway, so that's why Paper Town is my best game. Next is Fish Tank Commander, which is also my best game ever. This is the only game of every single Ludum Dare that I have done that was not done in Unity. This was a Ruby on Rails application. It was a turn-based sort of play-by-email strategy game. It was sort of chess meets StarCraft kind of thing. You had a map, you had bases, your bases generated resource. From those resources, you could spawn units. This was, so the theme, by the way, was Tiny World. And so the idea with this game is, well, Fish Tank Commander, or Tank Commander, right? It was sort of a play on words there. But the idea is there's the combat for the control over an aquarium. Basically. And what was cool, there was 4 different maps. Actually, no, there weren't 4 different maps. There was a map editor, so people could make their own. So this was a website. People could make their own maps, submit it. People could upvote them, downvote them. So it was very Web 2.0. And you could challenge anyone on the website to play a match, and then you would take your turn, and you can actually see the little notification icon over here. People would be notified in real time when there was a turn waiting for them. They got to pop up here. I think they'd also get an email notification. And then you would play until you defeated the other side, and turn and this, and it would, I believe it would update in real time on your screen as well. I think the JavaScript would poll the server to find out if any new moves had come in and would do that. And that's a pretty advanced kind of thing to do. I think here, yeah, you can actually see the map editor. And what do we have here? Oh yeah, we implemented an ELO rating system. You could also get XP and level up based on how many games. Big combat in a tiny aquarium. And oh yeah, when you were logged in, it always said, "Hi, username, you're my favorite," and then it had a random fish name, which I thought was really entertaining. I am my profession for a long time was being a web application developer, so I was able to use my Ruby on Rails and web application expertise to implement this, and it was incredibly fun to do. And I still get lots of people bugging me to get this website back up and running because I had a server and a domain name. It was literally, I think it was fishtankcommander.com. Actually, probably if I try to use one of these links. Yeah, fishtankcommander.com, which is no longer there. Oh, but the source is up on GitHub. So there you go. If you want to, try to implement it. This, first of all, was 4 years ago. And it was, I don't remember what version of Ruby on Rails this was, but it's not going to be the current one. So a lot of things are definitely going to break. But, that'll be an interesting project to work on there. And yeah, I just worked, just a text editor, and then I used GIMP to make some graphics and host it on Heroku, and it was excellent. And people still would like to play it again. And I gotta admit, this shit was bananas. When I think about trying to pull this off in 48 hours, I would be scared to do that now. And I think I'm a much better programmer now than I was then. Although I'm certainly not as good as a Ruby on Rails programmer anymore because they'd be out of practice. Anyway, that's why Fish Tank Commander is the best game I've ever made. Next up is Pinball G. Pinball G is the best game I ever made. And the reason for this is I thought it was such a great way to use the theme. So the theme for this competition was evolution. And the competition was filled with people who made sort of like very vanilla RPG kind of things where, oh, you get to, click a button and get +1 damage, and oh, that's like evolution or whatever. Or taking it very literally in other weird ways where, like, you would change from one type of animal to another. And, like, that's not how evolution works. And one of the things is I love pinball in real life. And one of the great things about pinball is there are pinball games for every single possible theme that you can imagine, right? Any movie, any TV show, any concept, right? You can have a pinball game with that. You use the graphic design of the table, some of the sound effects, some of the design ideas between how you can sort of set up combos. By the way, if you've never really played pinball, I mean, everyone's played a little bit of pinball, which is one of the reasons I love pinball. You don't have to explain pinball to someone. You sit them in front of a machine, they got the buttons on the side, all right, you got flippers that go up and down, great, and you got this ball. Okay, we'll use the flippers to try to keep the ball in motion. Perfect. Excellent. You lose when you lose the ball. You don't need any explanation. It's such a physical, amazing experience. I have 2 pinball machines in my basement. They they are old. They didn't run. I rewired the whole thing. One of those how people, they'll buy this rusted out hulk of a car and then they'll spend years fixing the car up. Well, that's me with pinball. I just love it. And so I decided to make this pinball game for it, especially at the time I was way into it. And it was going to be a fun way to learn Unity physics because I've gone back to Unity, right? I started with Unity, learned that. Then I went to what I considered to be my roots at the time, web development. And then I was like, I'm going to try Unity again. I haven't played with the physics. So this was a way to learn the physics thing. And one of my goals with most Ludum Dares is, certainly if you want to do really well, the advice is always know your tools. And that is true. But I always try to also include and try to learn one thing. Know your tools as well as possible, but try one new thing so that you can learn it. And for me, this was an exercise in learning physics. And specifically, learning physics with the fast-moving objects that are involved in pinball is not as easy as you might think. Anyway, and one of the cool things you can do on the computer is you don't need to have a pinball table that is square. So I had this different shape. It was the first time working with using Blender to make 3D meshes and incorporate in there. It looks like ass. Don't get me wrong. It's very simple kind of graphics. Can't remember. I think the green background may have swirled around. Basic gameplay is this. If you pull back on the plunger, it goes back here, bounces back and forth correctly. You've got these 3 little lanes up here that can light up when the ball goes through. And I'm pretty sure if you toggle the left or right flipper, these lights would change around so that it wasn't a pure skill shot. You could actually get intentionally all 3 lights to light up. Can't remember what would happen if you got all 3 lights to light up. And when you had the bumpers over here, there's actually a little flipper right up here, just a little hard to see, but you've got an extra one, so you can keep trying to send the flipper up into the bumpers if you can. What else do we have? We've got a couple of bumpers here and there that activate. You got 3 letters to spell out DNA, which unlocks, I don't remember, I think spelling DNA opens this. This is actually a doorway. It opens the doorway to the spawning pit. So if you hit all 3 letters here for DNA, then get the ball in the spawning pit, and I think you have to, and that locks a ball. And I think if you lock 3 balls in there, then it starts a multi-ball, and all the balls are differently colored. I think it's called natural selection. Because the idea is, you'd be left with 1 ball at the end kind of thing after the multi-ball. This is the spawning pool over here. Actually, I don't know what this is called. I don't remember what this is called, because I think this is the spawning pool. You get up the ramp, go in there, and the bumpers gave you extra points. And I think if you got a certain amount of things, like if you bounce on these bumpers like 25 times, then another mode would activate. One of the things that happens is this thing spins around. This was it random selection? There was a term for it. I can't remember. There's a mutagenic compound. Oh, no, it's hitting this purple target here, spins this. That's the mutagenic compound, which then your ball, when it goes over, it sort of starts to get flung in a random direction. Randomness can be dangerous. Anyway, it had a high scores list, and yeah, it had this text here that wasn't necessarily that well done. And this is, yeah, even here. Oh, yeah, that's where, when you got your ball in here, it actually, the camera moved to give you a close-up of this area. So I still like it because I would have still loved to do another pinball game for a theme. Who knows? Maybe this competition will be the one where I do another pinball game, which I could do much better. I understand lighting and 3D modeling a lot better and the physics a lot better, and not to mention just pinball design a lot better than I did at the time. But I thought this was a great way to use the theme. And a lot of people were like, well, I don't get it. How does this do evolution? Like, well, unless you're like, maybe you should have a thing where if you do a thing, your ball gets bigger or this or that. And I'm like, no. I'm trying to make a pinball game. I was trying to make a pinball game that you could have in real life. I tried to do, I mean, other than the fact that like my physics for this were pretty wonky, I tried to make a game that you could physically make in real life. And if I were to make another pinball game today, I would still do that. I might still take the opportunity to make a map that, it wouldn't be practical in real life, but I would still make something that works in real life, and I would just try to use visuals and sounds and the theme behind combos to sell the particular theme we're going for. So I really liked it for that. I think there was a lot of negative comments about it, but overall, this was, with every competition, my fun rating got up a little bit, and fun continues to be the thing I target the most. Mood, innovation, theme, those things, you know what? I can take them or leave them. It's great if it comes out well. But for me, the number one rating is if a game does well is fun. So you can see here, I ended up with a fun rating of 2.3. Then I got a fun rating of 2.63. Then I got a fun rating of 3.42, which became my best rating out of everything overall, almost cracked the top 100. And then we get to KittenZilla. So Pinball G here, my best game ever. KittenZilla is also my best game ever, and for this one, it's starting to almost become a little bit more true, actually. KittenZilla scored 3.71 for fun and actually cracked the top 40. We actually cracked the top 40 in humor as well, and audio? What? Yeah, no, the sounds for this were fun to make. Every game I ever make, basically, the sound effects are almost exclusively done purely with the mic. And I think with KittenZilla, this was the first time this was 100% true. I just used the microphone. Sometimes, you get some metal things and clang them together, or some glasses or something like that. Like, there's different things. But most sound effects I do are literally just with my mouth and the microphone. And I think with this one, we had laser beams that would go pew, 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 that sort of thing, which was great. So the theme for this one was, you are the villain. And here, this is KittenZilla 3, the return of Mech and KittenZilla. I mean, there's no KittenZilla 1 or 2, but you can only imagine, right? And so this was another attempt to really work the physics system a lot. And in KittenZilla, you were basically like Godzilla, but a giant cat with laser eyes, and you had to destroy the town. And each one of these buildings, I don't know if we got a good screenshot of it, each one of these buildings is very destructible, and you can break down the bottom, and the top will topple over. And this was an interesting exercise in figuring out the limits of the sort of physics engine in Unity, because I had destructible terrain, and it would shatter into a bunch of fragments, and that, was performance horrific. This was really, really fun to make. There were tanks that would come and try to shoot you, but you could blow up the tanks and they would drop health kits. And it remains a very fun game. Also, this screenshot here from the editor, taken isometric view, as soon as I see it, I'm like, I need to make a city building game. Graphically, very weak, not gonna lie about that, but hell of a lot of fun. It reminded me of playing like the old Rampage games, the old 2D Rampage games that you had to beat up the city. That's what I was going for. I was going for that sort of game, but in 3D and first person as well, with like lasers. This is the first time I even used the shader, where when you get near the edge of the map, it almost looks like this force field keeping you in, which is very fun to do. So that's why KittenZilla 3 was the best game ever. Shoot is also the best game ever. That I ever made. Shoot, or its original title, and I sort of wish I'd kept this, is AAA FPS Game of the Year, which is great. So this one here, the theme was minimalism. And what was interesting about this one is there was surprise. I wonder if I actually noted it, how long it took. No. Interesting. So with all of my... Oh, and what's the fun rating on this one? 3.81. Excellent. Is that actually higher than KittenZilla? It is. With every one, the games are getting more and more and more fun. So what's interesting about this one is that I actually started making a completely different game originally. And this is my rule. I always say this. Listen, Friday night, so the competition starts at 9 p.m. Eastern, right? Friday night, I start the program. Usually I allow myself up to an hour to think about the game idea. And, we debate with the chat and we have fun with that, and it's great stuff. But then it's like by 10 p.m. I have to start making stuff. And I always allow myself that time. And you know what? It's worked out. It's weird. Like, the first hour, I'm almost not programming at all. And yet, it works out, and that's because we're planning things. So for the first hour, we sort of talked about ideas. And originally, so with minimalism, we had an idea of sort of a semi-puzzle game or whatever, where you're sort of in a square room with tiles, and more tiles would sort of drop from the ceiling, and you had to just basically survive by hopping onto these different tiles. And I started implementing it, and I wasn't really feeling it, and I went to bed that night, and the next morning I woke up and I'm like, no, I'm doing a completely different game. So already, I'm hours behind. But I decided to throw it out, and I've never once regretted the decision on this game, throwing out the other game at all, and I decided to do this. In KittenZilla, I'd experimented a little bit with doing sort of a first-person style game, but I've always really loved the classic old-school first-person shooters. I'm thinking, Wolfenstein and the original Doom and that sort of thing. And what I decided to do, the theme was minimalism. Well, the game I tried to do was really ambitious for something called minimalism. I was doing a multiplayer first-person shooter, and it worked well. It was the idea to do a pure first-person shooter with nothing that's required. Just one gun, no ammo, no complex terrain. That's what it says here. Only contains the elements that are absolutely required for fun pew-pew-pew experience. It is a multiplayer setup. It's got a server, automatic matchmaking. You just connect to the game. You say you want to connect to multiplayer, and you join a game. It can have up to 16 players in the game, and if there's any empty slots, it automatically gets filled with bots, which I always thought was great. There are health pickups and armor pickups as well, because part of the gameplay in these competitive first-person shooters of this style, right? Like if you look at Quake Live, for example, is about knowing how to flow around the map and continuously collect items to keep your health up so that you can continuously beat other people. And so that's what was going on here. And when you died, it gave you this great overhead shot, and where you could see all the action going on, which actually served as an impetus for a game later on when we get to Ink. I always liked the feeling I got from looking down on this view, and I was like, I kind of want to do this again. Anyway, and so that was it. And it still works. I mean, you just log in. Yeah, in front of 8,000 unique viewers. Now, that was not concurrent. That was over the course of the weekend. But yeah, 8,000 people ultimately watched us do this. We even set up a raid call, channel ID for people to jump in and play afterwards. And for the next 3 weeks during the voting, I was consistently in this to provide, the occasional human opponent for anyone who was judging the game. But also, there was almost always someone in it, and it was great fun to play. And in fact, assuming that we can still get it up and running with the Photon Unity networking, we may try to play a little bit of this before the next stream. But this was amazing. I mean, who does a multiplayer game for a 48-hour game jam? And it was stupid amounts of fun to play. Just loved it. And clearly, the fun got up. How did this one get such a high humor rating? Because every time your character died or anyone died, they always said something, and there was something like 50 different death lines that were all voice acted as well. And they're like, "I blame lag," and those sorts of types of things. And it was really fun working with the chat to come up with more and more of those. And that's my favorite time is usually Sunday afternoon when we've wrapped up most of the features, and I just want to do sound effects. And it's just 4 hours of me saying random stuff into the mic that the chat wants me to say, and then we take some of that and put it in the game, which is huge amounts of fun. Okay, so that's why Shoot, or rather AAA FPS Game of the Year, is the best game I've ever made for Ludum Dare. Next up is Time Hack. This, and I know what it looks like, but I say this with very much sincerity, with the same amount of sincerity, I suppose, as all the others, but this is the best game I've ever made for Ludum Dare. How could that be? It's actually a very simplistic game to play, and I was actually playing it recently. In fact, can I still play it? I think I still have my computer. Hold on. Let me open this up. Builds, Do I not have a Windows build? Oh, I don't have it ready. Anyway, it's basically like Frogger, basically. Sorry, I can't show you in action. It's basically like Frogger. This is you. You're trying to move up. These lanes are moving left and right, and the red bits are bad. The theme was like, oh, it's a Hollywood-style hacking game or whatever. And you got 10 seconds. Oh, that was the theme, by the way, is 10 seconds over here. So you had 10 seconds of time, but you could pick up extra clocks and extend your time. You're just trying to go as far as you could, and your score was based on your distance. And the lanes were moving faster and faster and faster the further you got forward. And you can say, how can I seriously say that this is the best game I've ever done? Well, the reason I did it is because this was going to be the one Ludum Dare that I couldn't participate because I was in Europe. I believe this fell on Gamescom sort of weekend, right around there. And I was in Germany for Gamescom. And I was working basically the whole weekend. But I was done by, I think, Saturday. Saturday, I got on a plane and I was flying home. And so, overseas, like 35,000 feet over the Atlantic Ocean with no internet, I made this game during a plane flight. And I guess I left Sunday morning probably, or something like that, I don't know. Because what happened is when I landed in Toronto at Pearson International, which has wireless internet, I uploaded my game with like an hour to spare. I landed, got on the Wi-Fi, and uploaded this game. And this game is the greatest because I did it 35,000 feet above the Atlantic, and I did not miss Ludum Dare, which was very important to me. And so was that. I mean, the scores, obviously took a little bit of a dip. But yeah, seriously, I was on a 6th Ludum Dare streak, and I didn't want to break it. And I'm now going to be on number 14 over here. Didn't even have a mouse, right, because I was on a laptop. But there we go. So that was that, and god damn it, I am proud of this thing. Time Hack is the best game I've ever made. Lighter! Lighter is the best game I ever made. Let me tell you something. After I made Lighter, I became incredibly depressed. At the time, I still had a day job. I was not a full-time YouTuber, and I certainly didn't have the time to do any of my own game development because, I had my day job. It was, I had to pay the bills and all these things, and obviously you can't just decide, to spontaneously quit your job and become a game developer. I didn't have what it took to do that. I didn't have the courage or, the trust in myself. I could not simply just quit my job to become a game developer. And so Ludum Dare weekends were my real only opportunity to do that, which is one of the reasons I cherish Ludum Dare so much, because it gave me the chance to do game development. I could commit to a weekend once every 3 months, actually once every 4 months, commit to a weekend to do some game development. And after I finished Lighter, which is a first-person puzzle sort of adventure game, I became incredibly depressed because I thought, I just wasted one of my few precious Ludum Dare weekends not doing one of my games. It wasn't sort of a, I don't know. I'd really wanted to do a strategy game, and I didn't do it. This wasn't a strategy game. It was a first-person puzzle exploration game. And I really was quite depressed. And I feel sad for my own self then, because this is a very good game, and I'm very proud of this one. The theme for this one is you only get one. And I had settled quite early on the idea of exploring this tomb, like that you'd fallen in. This is like the hole you'd fallen in here, which is why you get like sunlight that come in through there. And my original idea was like you only get one match or one book of matches, and it was like I didn't like the book of matches because it felt like more than one thing, but one match was like, well, that's not going to last long enough. So I got the idea of why not use a lighter. So the idea was this tomb is pitch black. You can't see anything. All you've got that sheds light is your lighter, except in this one room where you've got this thing. All you've got that shed lights is your lighter, but there's only a little bit of fuel left. So as you go around, if you want to be able to see, you flick open your lighter. It's fine, but the light dims and dims and dims as the light goes on, the game goes on, until it fades away to almost nothing, and then it's completely gone, and that's when you lose. And it's got this great little flick thing. It's the mouse wheel on the mouse that flicks the lighter on and off. That's actually a suggestion from someone in the chat, and it feels really cool. It's got a variety of rooms, a wide variety of puzzles. It's got some very scary spiders that look terrifying in the dark with their red glowing eyes. It does have one really bad sort of chessboard puzzle, but everything else I really like. It's got like, you got to go around and collect 3 keys. One of the rooms, when you collect the key, does the Indiana Jones sort of giant boulder running at you. It like felt very Indiana Jones exploring, some sort of Temple of Doom kind of thing. And I quite like it. The final room has got like a giant golden head that you got to insert 3 keys in. It's got more 3D stuff going on than any of my previous titles. I don't have any more screenshots here, which is too bad. But the lighter in particular looks really nice, I think, with the modeling on it and the texturing that I put in. I'm quite proud still today about how the lighter looks. I thought it was quite good. Obviously, the textures in the world are relatively simple, but still not bad. Definitely visually, up until this point, the most complex Unity game I'd made, even though this scene doesn't really necessarily show it off. And I'm in hindsight now, since then, I'm very proud of this entry. But at the time, I was incredibly depressed, like heartbroken. Essentially, my wife like really had to console me. It's like, this is not going to be the last Ludum Dare. It's going to be okay. But now I'm actually really, really proud of that entry. And actually, it scored very well. And again, got a really good audio rating, partially because your character is constantly talking and giving feedback and being sarcastic and stuff. And again, we had a lot of different dialogue in there for him. He would respond to the environment when he would see spiders, and as the light would get low, like he had all this contextual stuff that he would say out loud that was really fun to do. So got a good audio score for that. It was relatively moody and funny, and just sort of fun to play. Actually, it's interesting that, yeah, this entry, while it's still scoring well and fun, it is worth noting that it was sort of like a better overall game than a lot of my previous entries, but not necessarily as fun, which is something else that was like, I would like to correct that in the future. So Lighter, despite the fact, I love the little one there too, despite the fact that at the time I was very depressed about it, is one of my best games ever. Next, we come to Drill 18, which is literally my highest rated game ever. This is the game that has done the best. Out of, at the time, I think there was something like 1,600 entries or something like that. This came in number 6 overall and 9th overall for fun. I'd cracked the top 10, both for overallness, which was nice, but also for fun, which was amazing to me. Drill 18 is sort of a Sim Tower game, if you might remember that, meets a sort of Dwarf Fortressy sorts of thing, meets a sort of like incremental game like a cookie clicker. It was basically that all wrapped together. It was my first time doing an actual 2D game. Up until now, notice all my Unity games have been 3D, right? 3D. This one is 2D and actually looked quite nice, but wasn't a Unity game. 3D, 3D, 3D. I love the look of this one still, don't get me wrong. 3D, 3D, 2D. This came about after Unity had introduced the 2D toolkit. So I think this was around Unity 4.5. It was still in the early days of the 2D toolkit, and there was a lot of optimization to make. But I wanted to make a 2D game to try out this new toolkit. The new UI system hadn't come in, by the way, yet. But we did have the 2D toolkit, and it was great fun to work with. And this was incredibly fun. This game still gets a lot of play. It is still an incredibly fun game to play. It's by far got my best music. Sound effects are relatively light because there's not a lot to do, although it does advertise cat-based sound effects right over here. I got Gilbert to provide the sound of the drill. Basically, I held him up to the microphone while he was purring, and then I did a little bit of tweaking with it in Audacity. But when you drill down, it's actually Gilbert the cat purring as it goes there. And yeah, it has a bunch of different mechanics. It looks great, the little animation. Each room has animation that goes on while the rooms are active. And yeah, these pickaxes were a tribute to Notch from Minecraft fame. He was in the chat talking. He's participated in a lot of these Ludum Dares, by the way. And he just happened to stop by when I was working in this room. I'm like, I'm going to make these pickaxes look like Minecraft pickaxes. And yeah, people would sleep. They need to eat. They've got this little bar here, or this is a restaurant where they eat hamburgers, and here they've got a bar where they drink martinis, and they knock back the glasses. It looks adorable. Visually, I was really happy with this. And this, to this day, legitimately remains one of it's my best scoring entry, and to a lot of people, it is their favorite entry, the best entry. And in all legitimacy, when we get to Growth Industries, this is legitimately the game that I think is my best overall. Even though it didn't score as well as Drill 18. It did score really well, though. But Growth Industries is actually my personal favorite. But this was very good. And in fact, I had put in a lot of work over the next few months coming out with a revised version of this, because one of the things, the performance in this really drops in the late stage, especially if you decide to continue past the win condition. It's not very performant, and so I put in a lot of work to do a revamped version of this that was much more performant and had new features. And in theory, I'd still like to complete it one day, but at this point, I have realized that if I want to keep making videos full time, then really making a full time dedication to the game is a little bit beyond me. But I can still have the joy of completing creating games here, and then combining that with the work on the Quill18 Creates channel, where we discuss more programming and things like that. And I scratch all the programming itches. I mean, what am I going to do? Complain about my life? That I'm not someone who makes video games? Dude, my life's pretty good. In fact, probably better. Yeah, so I'm okay with the fact that I've never gone and done the version 2.0 that I was going to sell somewhere. I still really enjoy this game. Great feedback. I'm actually a little disappointed that the graphics didn't score higher. I still think these graphics are adorable, and when you see them animated especially, I think it really sells the game. And yeah, everything came together to be a lot of fun here. The gameplay, a little bit of the initial difficulty, and I don't know, thought it was great. 99 Luftwaffles. This is the best game I've ever made for Ludum. No, this is legitimately the one I'm most disappointed about for multiple reasons, actually. So the theme for this one was Connected Worlds, and this map here, the idea is there's 4 different areas going on. They were destroyed by some, I don't know, horrific maelstrom at some point, and everyone lives in these floating cities around here. Do we have a close-up of that? No, we don't have a close-up of the little floating cities. Too bad. There's little propellers and stuff like that. It's kind of steampunky. And you use zeppelins to trade. And these various industries exist on these different little islands, and you set up routes between the different industries with your zeppelin routes, and you can have multiple stops to trade and generate the industry. For example, the mega cattle ranches generate wheat and leather, and the milk and leather. I was getting ahead of myself. The milk combined with the wheat from the wheat farms can both be sent to the waffle houses, which produces stroop waffles, which you can then ship to the cities and feed the cities, for example. The leather can be sent down. It's a little bit cut off here, but there's a place to make like goggles, steampunky goggles, for example. So you get the leather from there and the glass from the glass blower. And actually, from here you got to get the sand pit. So you get the sand to go to the glass blower, which then creates the glass, I think in combination with coal maybe. And then you send that over here, you get the cool glasses and top hats and stuff, and then you ship them off to the cities, and they grow in other ways. So it was an economic simulation game. I'd really wanted to do something that felt like Railroad Tycoon 3. And unfortunately, it fell short. And part of it was because even though these visuals really look like a terrible mess, they took a lot of time. It turns out that, I mean, it does take a lot of time to do these little 3D models and then do all the texture mapping for them, and then actually, like the UV mapping, and then actually generate all the textures and so on and so forth. It was incredibly time consuming, and almost all of these are also animated. I think the tail of the cow waggles back and forth. Here the scissors open and close. There's little smoke effects on most of these, like particle effects and things like that. We sank a lot of time into trying to achieve a certain visual look, and some of the graphics are very cutesy. I quite like some of the graphics a little bit, sort of in context, like, oh, it's kind of cute and silly and whatever. We ended up having to rush so much. Like, the fruit orchards are pretty good. We had to rush so much that in the end, a lot of stuff ended up having to be looking kind of samey. But the graphics were such a time sink that the world doesn't look very good, this sort of isolated little floating thing. And the economic models were kind of, There was supply and demand things going on, but no, it was a failed execution, which is too bad because this is very much the sort of game I would love to make. And I kind of want to take another crack at this style of game at some point, but I probably wouldn't go 3D for it because that kind of game requires a lot of work on the mechanics and the game balance, and you really have to try to limit your time budget that goes other places. So because you need to use a lot of your time budget for the balance and the mechanics. So as a result, I would take a different approach these days. It was still interesting. It was fun to do. And I was like, okay, I did a thing. But yeah, even though in many ways it's a step up from, Paper Towns, I still think Paper Towns is a much stronger game than 99 Luftwaffles, which is too bad. Score-wise, I think it didn't do great. It did still crack the top 100 overall, but the fun was really low. And that's what disappoints me, because fun is the thing I aim for. I don't care about anything else. As long as it's fun, then I've achieved my goals. And here, I clearly did not. Next up, we've got V for Victory. So V for Victory, Maximum Overkill Edition, was an attempt to return to 2D, right? Because I'd done 2D here, went back to 3D here, I realized it was such a time sink. So what I learned is I should probably stick with 2D and do that. And we ended up here with V for Victory. The theme for this one was entire game on one screen, which is maybe a weak sauce kind of theme. But there you go. So I didn't want to have anything that would scroll. I didn't want to have multiple rooms or whatever like that. And so I decided to go for an old school arcadey look where it looks like like the old vector graphics, like the original vector graphics, where in case you don't know how like vector graphics sort of worked, like your TV, your classic TVs, right? Your old school CRTs, it would work because you have an actual electron beam. So on the screen itself is like phosphorescent or something like that. It's basically a chemical that if you hit it with a beam of electrons, it glows. And so you have this one beam of electrons and these two magnets, one to the top and one to the bottom, which depending on how strong the magnet is, can bend the beam up or down or left and right. And this works in concert to make this this beam of electrons go one line at a time on your TV, and it draws basically all the pixels on your TV. So that is the sort of the scan line or raster system television. But at the time, some people, because it was quite slow to draw all that, and also, to write out individual pixels to memory at a time when RAM was basically non-existent, the other thing you could do is you could have the display worked with vector graphics, where instead of scanning one line at a time, you'd point the electron ray here, and then you just sweep it down to there. And literally, like, physically draw these lines on the monitor. And it meant that you ended up with things that looked sort of like this, a lot of blackness, and, everything sort of getting drawn out with just simple lines. These circle things here sort of cheat, and certainly the explosions wouldn't be the vector. But that was the idea, and I wanted lots of craziness and lots of particles. And actually seeing this in action, it's like pretty hectic, like all the beams and the particles that bounce around. I think looks really good. I love the shiny lights. I thought that was great. Originally, it was supposed to be a sort of, it was supposed to feel a little bit more like a MOBA, like a League of Legends or a Dota or something like that, with like sort of 3 lanes, and there would be minions coming down all the lanes, and it would be a MOBA combined with sort of tower defense, because you could build turrets and things like that, combined with sort of an asteroid style or shmup kind of shooter where you have your own ship that could also be upgraded with a variety of cool weapon upgrades, like more laser beams or missiles, or I can't remember what the other variant is. There's 3 different, and like sort of just a spread shot, like a shotgunny kind of thing. And then ended up trying to do a little too much. Like, I think, and all your enemies were geometric shapes. These squares were, like, actually slow but very tanky. The triangles, I think, were very fast. You have your base in the middle. I ended up eventually moving the base to the middle over here. You got upgrade points from killing things. You could also, these squid guys over here didn't advance, but they were sort of like jungle creeps. So if you had a moment, you could go over here and kill them and get lots of extra points. But they were a little tough to do. The game tried to do too many things simultaneously. It did, I think, the shooting part of it is fantastic, and I stand by it. I think that's a lot of fun. But the tower defense, like, you mostly ended up sort of ignoring these. Actually, just the turrets I thought were quite good, and balancing it was hard. The firewalls went from either being like the most OP thing in the world or the weakest thing in the world, and no one ever used the nuke, which is too bad, because we spent a lot of time getting a really cool nuke effect, which was really, really too bad. What I would do now, if I were to take another crack at this, what I would have done is, I still would have had the nuke, but I would have had the nuke be not use the same resources as everything else, because you're spending your upgrade points. It was like, no, there's too many. Oh, yeah, you hit spacebar, that's right, and actually upgrade your ship. That's right, it had a full upgrade system, which is excellent. But there was a conflict. Do you spend your upgrade points upgrading your ship or spending it on turrets? And I did like that sort of choice you had to make. But then the nukes really didn't factor into that. So I think if I do it again, I would still have the turrets and the ability to upgrade them. And maybe some sort of way to slow down things. There might be, some possibilities there. But mostly focusing on the ship upgrade. And I think the nuke would be something every now and again you could pick one up or something like that. So it would be a different resource. Still a very fun game, I thought. And I think here we're back to fun being our highest score and actually doing quite well there. I really, really enjoyed the game. My complaints, it's like, here's the thing, I enjoy the game so much that I'm nitpicking about the game balance. It's actually a lot of fun to play. This is one of those rare cases where I achieved the look I was going for. Now, whether this look looks intentional or not, right? Like, whether this was a good visual idea, a good visual concept, I don't know. Maybe I should have gone for, straighter lines. But I was specifically going for this look, and everything looks like it's glowing, and I executed that. So whether it was a good idea or not, I don't know, but I was happy that I executed it. So I actually quite enjoy this game. Next up is Ink. Ink is the game with the best logo. God damn, I love this logo so much. Like, that's why, with everything else, like, the screenshot you come in and is, like, the gameplay, right? It's always the gameplay. Oops. It's always the gameplay. I'm watching some Archer in the background there. It's always the gameplay. But for Ink, I was like, no, I just show the logo. Which is actually cool, because when you look at the listing of all the games over here, right, and you look at all the screenshots, Ink actually stands out really nicely. Oh, look, Laserino. See, they did the same sort of thing. And Hacked. Actually, these are all sort of logo-type things. and I think that's quite cool. So yeah, and visually, Ink has some of the strongest visuals. Something again, it has a certain amount of inconsistency as a result of just limited time and limited art skills. But I like the look of this a lot. These books. So the idea with this one, so it was an unconventional weapon, and here your character is suffering from writer's block and then gets sort of pulled into this imaginary world of fiction and books and things like that, a literal world of literature. And he's got a fountain pen. And he can stab enemies with it, or he can shoot beams with it. And it's I was trying to go for, my goal was to make an action RPG game, a sort of Diablo-like or a Path of Exile type game, that sort of thing. It's got a procedural level generation that is quite good for making dungeons. It's actually exceptional for that. It's got a handful of types of enemies, and he's got 2 types of attacks. He could melee and he could beam. But originally my plan had been to have it so that when you killed an enemy, and this still happens, they explode in a shower of letters, which I think looks really good. And in the current state, when you pick up the letters, it fills the ink in your fountain pen. That's the mechanic. You kill enemies to generate ink. Ninjas over here. And they still explode in letters based on their name. But originally the idea was you collect the letters and you could sort of like use letters to spell things to like create. I wanted to have a weapon crafting system. So you could spell like, you know, sword of fire or something like that and then generate a sword of fire. But it was going to be difficult to balance with the enemy names, and I was trying to find a different thing, and it would have been incredibly time consuming. And this was a game where the graphics sank a lot of time, and that'll be, you know, you can see in 3D, and I learned the lesson of graphics. I went to 2D, then I tried 3D again, then we're back to 2D and 2D. But the visuals here are by far my best. The books, especially if you're running the game, look great. There are 3 or 4 different variants of the books that are part of, like, they're procedurally generated as part of the wall. You can see, like, the bookmarks here come in different styles. They can be colored and textured different ways. You walk on some pages. You leave a trail of ink behind with every step, which looks, I think, fantastic. They fade out over time. Your beam, when you use the ink beam from your pen, it stains the walls black, and it does fade, I think, over time. I'm not sure, but it stains it black, which looks great. When you kill the enemies, they explode in a shower of things. Some of the enemies look okay. Most of them look pretty weak. That was like, it was very difficult to put in the time. This book, though, this is how you explore the level. You're looking for certain things, and when you get to these books, they open up and the pages unfold and look really good. Play the game if you can. These downloads should still work. Where's this point to? Yeah, it's on the Quill 18 server, so these downloads will still work. Play the game if you can. I'm really proud about the visuals, but it took a long time. The 3D animations of the characters, of the objects, trying to model them. Some look a lot like ass, like these ninjas and whatever. The pirates look particularly bad, but I really want another type of character here. Inky Mick Wordsworth, that's right. His final words were left unpublished. I like that. I like the pen here. It actually looks quite cool if you see it when it's a little bit more full. So the line in the middle is your ink level, but the color of the pen itself is your hit points. And as your hit points fade down, it turns grayscale. And also you've got the little meters to make it a little bit more explicit. There were a lot of visual touches in here that was really good, but a lot of others we didn't have time to finish, and the gameplay itself was weak because of time. So again, I learned a big lesson in time management. And then the last 2 games, I've done a really good job of applying that lesson in time management. So now we get to Hell Wars over here. The theme is you are the monster. Notice we've already had one before, which was you are the villain. Themes do repeat from time to time in Ludum Dare, partially because they're still good ideas, partially because new people have come and haven't experienced the previous theme. So I definitely didn't want to do anything that was too similar to this, although I had debated making a sequel to KittenZilla. Actually, it was going to be like KittenZilla 2. I was sort of going to go back in time and try to like imitate an older version of a game. But I was like, no, I want to do something a little bit different. And I still like strategy gaming and things like that. And part of me was still like, you know, V for Victory. I liked one phase of the game. I thought the tower defense part was awkward and not really, you know, completely thought out. So I'm like, I'm going to focus on the tower defense more strongly here. So what we have here is Hell Wars 18. Soul Harvest. This is a game where you are playing as a sort of a middle manager in hell. You are a monster. You're a demon in charge, you know, with managing a certain part of hell. You've got an intake of souls. Souls are coming into your area. You've got to make sure they get distributed to the correct place. The souls are these lovely ghosts that are inspired by the old Commodore 64 Ghostbusters game. So they're all color-coded based on their sin. So one of the things you have to do is make sure you have enough storage for all of your sinners. They all need a different color-coded storage depending on their sin. And they all have like little... I wonder how much I can zoom in here. It's going to be a little fuzzy, but in here. But so you limbo, those are for your generic souls over here. But you got your greed ones. You've got your gluttony ones. It's a fork and knife, and they've half eaten the sign. Heresy, which is the burning cross, and a few other things like that. Treachery, which has the noose that holds it up. And these are almost all animated as well. So some of the lights on the signs blink like a neon sign, or the treachery one I think sort of rocks back and forth. So you've got that. Meanwhile, your other middle manager, Hell Lords, are trying to come to you and steal your souls. And so they will spawn from time to time, and they're all named after subscribers. This is the first time I'd introduced that sort of mechanic in there, and I love that. Rhinoceros Massimist, Real Flowball. Like, these people are all around still, all of these guys. And so they would arrive. No. Right. The subscribers would, all the sinners had a name. Right, level 7 sinner, for example. Bromach level 7 was, I don't remember which one that is, but it was violence was their sin. So and so on and so forth. And then the Hell Lords were named after I think people who had donated or something of that nature. And so it was great fun to do that kind of thing. And they would show up, and then you had the tower defense element where you had 3 different types of cannons. I intentionally tried to limit the number of distinct weapon types because I wanted to very clearly contrast their behavior. So you had the Essentia cannon, which was basically like a long-range sniper cannon. Slow shooting, but relatively powerful shots, and long range. Then you had the Soul Shredder, which was much shorter range, but very fast firing. Then you had the Soul Zuka, which was very expensive to build, and had a different mechanic. Instead of doing a fixed amount of damage, Soul Zukas actually do percentage hit point damage. And they do it by sucking the souls out of your storage from nearby. So they do have a cost because, by the way, you get more money. The more souls you have, the more money you make. But the cost to do everything goes up, I think, exponentially or something like that. I don't remember. There's something of that nature. So the Soul Zukas would effectively decrease your income because they would consume some of your souls. But they would do percentage-based hit point to the enemy, which was important because the amount of hit points that monsters spawned with would go up exponentially. They'd start at 100. Then by later on in the game, you're talking about millions or billions of hit points. So it was important to knock them down by percentage. But it also means your soul cannons can't actually kill anything. Because let's say they're knocking off 50% of the hit points. Well, they knock off 50%, then 50%, then 50%, then 50%. Each time, affect the absolute amount that they're knocking it off is decreasing. So you still needed the other cannons to kill it off. And it felt good. I felt by the end of it, the balance was great. It always felt like it was difficult to kill them. And then, so these 3 weapons, then I had 3 boosters. And the boosters would boost either damage, fire rate, or range, and would have a little bit of a radius around them. But what was incredible about this game, and it's not shown off here, which is too bad. This game features really good mouse over stuff. Oh yeah, there was several different graphics for the Demon Lords as well. This was the first game where I really put a lot of effort into the user interface. And that, again, one of the things I've tried to do in a lot of these is try to really do a good job of putting in the stuff that I feel games should have. Almost all of them have a main menu. They have an intro screen. They have a main menu. They have a settings screen. They have a tutorial of some kind, even if it's just, a series of dialogue boxes. I try to have all these things in there. And this one here, we have actually a really good user interface where when you're placing down any of these cannons, it actually tells you in the pop-up somewhere. Hold on. 1 second here. Oh, I don't have a web build made available. Oh, that's too bad. Should. Anyway, you can test it yourself. When you have a cannon, it's got a little tooltip that tells you how much damage it does, what the fire rate is, what the damage is, and what the damage per second is. And also, it shows you the radius that it can reach. But as you move it around, it's smart enough to automatically update based on any of the boosters you have. So if you move near a range booster, your range circle will actually go bigger to show you that the range has increased. And if you go near a fire rate booster or anything like that, it'll tell you what the fire rate will be if you place it here. And it takes into account all the different cannons. And when you plop it down, it's got the correct fire rate. And then if you put down another helper cannon over there, it correctly updates all the existing guns. That works really well. And I think in a way that, most of the games that get submitted to Ludum Dare, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of games that get submitted to Ludum Dare that are much, much, much better than me. More artistic, more creative, different things like that. But those little UI niceties and just sort of quality of life improvements, that's not something you normally see in a game jam. And especially with Hell Wars, and also then later on next with Growth Industries, that really starts to be something that I try hard to do. And I think that's starting to pay off more and more. Drill 18 had a fair amount of that stuff too. A lot of feedback. Anyway, this game was rated very well. It was 16th overall in fun, or 16th in fun, and 33rd overall, which I loved. I like that the humor is good. But we're back on track with the fun. This was an incredibly fun game to play. It was fun to make, to come up with different things. It was incredibly fun to play, and it was very well received overall, which made me incredibly happy. I mean, visually, it's not necessarily the strongest game, although it ain't bad, and it gets the job done. There's a certain limit to how much graphic stuff you can do for this sort of thing. And yeah, anyway, I thought that was great. So now we get to Growth Industries, which is actually what I consider to be my best game to date. Even though it did not score as highly as Drill 18, still came in good. 19th overall is fantastic. In fact, I think my top overall scores, I think with Drill 18 coming in 6th, followed by Hell Wars coming in 33rd for overall, Drill 18, Growth Industries, then Hell Wars, I think are my best overall scores. It's a little hard to say because there's different number of people in each competition, right? So is this 19th overall stronger than the 6th overall from Drill 18 based on the fact that there's more competition? I don't know. Growth Industries fun did not beat its overall, but the fun was still really high. And to me, the overall was a acknowledgement of the level of polish that I put into this. And this one is the first one since the WebGL support has properly been introduced into Unity, and it's working properly here. So we can actually demo this. So this is very much my kind of game here. And Growth Industries, the theme, actually this is the first time there was 2 themes. They're literally tied, 2-button controls and growing. And I didn't want to do 2-button controls because I wanted to do a strategy game and I couldn't really think of a good way to incorporate that in there that made sense. But I like growing, so I came up with Growth Industries. I'm very happy about this this front page here, because this title screen, because again, while was the best idea, but I executed it perfectly. I wanted something that looked like a 1980s slide presentation, or maybe like a 1990s PowerPoint presentation slide. Growth Industries, bigger is better. And yeah, you can play it. And it's got a little tutorial that we can skip. There we go. Although, honestly, the tutorial was almost entirely from like the board here. If you play it, it'll look a lot better. Here it's not super high res and it's being blown up in awkward ways because I'm playing it in the browser. I would definitely recommend you download the Windows version or whatever version and play it there because the resolution will look a lot better. So this is a game inspired by a lot of board games and things. And I'd gone into this one to make a card game or a board game alike. And so this is very strongly, specifically inspired by the great game Suburbia, which is a hex placement game, which is what this is. So it's a game where you put down cards over there, and every time you play, a turn goes by, and you get a certain amount of income from cards, and cards spend a certain amount of, they cost a certain amount of points to lay down, and they have certain effects, and they can have bonuses. So if you look here, the quality assurance gives you 2 extra income per adjacent industry, like assembly plant. So if I put this here, it's going to give us, by itself it has no income, but it has the adjacency bonus. So if I put cosmetics over here, we'll actually get 4 income from this, and so on and so forth. And here, we don't have enough to buy the next thing. So we got a choice whether we just skip a month and take some extra income, or we can take a bailout, which gives us $100, but puts down somewhere randomly on your board, or 10 bucks. Somewhere randomly on a board, this government bailout card, which might be in a bad place. It also causes a little bit of negative growth here for your stock price, and so on and so forth. And it's a great, fun game. The cards, I mean, they're not necessarily completely balanced. There's a lot of randomness is what comes up here. So for a big score, you really need some of the cards that end up giving you extra turns, which is something that can be done. But it has a lot of replay value. And again, I think a game that's really well executed. You click, just that little movement over here as you mouse over the card. You click here, it shows you everywhere you can place them, which is excellent. And we get the little pop-ups here. We had to do a lot of work. This is a game where we hit a lot of issues with this particular version of Unity, with their font. This is still in the early days of the UI system. The font handling, there was weird, glitchy stuff. We wasted a lot of time trying to get that to work right, and which is something that has now been fixed. We would have saved probably 2 hours of time messing around with fonts as a result of the fixes that have now come into Unity 5. In addition to that, it wouldn't run properly full screen on Windows, and I thought that was something I was doing it wrong. Turns out that was just another glitch. It would run fine. It would run fine in windowed mode, and it would even run fine in a window that was 1920 by 1080. it would look great. But as soon as you went to literal full screen mode, all the scaling on your fonts and graphics and stuff all went crazy. But this is only on Windows. It was fine on the Mac, for example. And it turned out to be a bug that we eventually figured out. Oh, the Mega Mall is great fun here. Notice I'm not allowed to put the Mega Mall here. And that's because it spawns 2 extra tiles. So you can't put it here because there's not enough room, so we'll put it there. These mega tiles that would spawn multiple things, this is one that I'd wish I'd worded a little bit differently and made it work a little bit different, so that they were all identical instead of what we got now. But it's still a lot of fun. There's also another great one. I don't know if we'll get there. Oh, the Dwarven Mug Factory. I'm just trying to click through here. No, we may not see one here, but that's one of the reasons that the replay is so much fun. It's a little bit different every time. Oh, viral video I want to show. So we put that down. It's fine. It just gives you 5 stock value by itself. It doesn't do anything each turn, but every turn you take, it spreads. You get another copy, and it keeps spreading. Oh, and we'll make another viral video over there. Only the latest one, they're not, all 5 of these aren't going to reproduce each other. It's just one string that goes on. But this other one will keep reproducing itself. Sometimes it'll reproduce itself in the corner and just stop. But otherwise, it's just going to keep going and going and going, which I thought was great fun. I thought that was excellent. Oh, we got like funny little lists and stuff like that. And anyway, you can give this a go. I'm really quite proud of this. And I'm very tempted to do, oh, and that's the end of the game. Get this cool little purple thing, and then it fades out. Then you get your audit, and then you get your grade. And there we go. So I really am quite keen on this, and I would love to take another crack at making another sort of board gamey kind of feel. It's a little reminiscent of the pinball thing, right? With the pinball thing, I feel like you can take any theme and make it into a pinball game, and you're working. It's almost like you're working in a more physical sense. Well, the same thing can sort of happen here with card and board games. I mean, there's card games and board games for basically every type of concept you can imagine. And so you can bring that to the computer world. And I love those games. And it was so much fun to do this, especially because, again, here, notice the graphics were relatively simple. Other than the stupid bullshit we had to deal with the fonts, the graphics were simple but effective. And I thought it looked good. I thought, they were minimalistic, but they do the job very, very, very well. And then we were able to just spend all the time on getting the game mechanics to be the way we want, and to balance the cards and add more cards, add more content. Even the last day, I was like, I think going into like late Saturday, I was like, for many Ludum Dares, I would submit the game as is at this point. It would be fine, and it would still be stronger than a lot of other people's entries, because it was already a relatively high quality game. But that meant all Sunday we could spend improving the user interface and adding little quality of life stuff. But then in addition to that, just coming up with more cards and coming up with more, improving the balance and just making the content tighter and tighter and tighter. And to me, by far, I feel that this is my best game. Again, Drill 18. I think Drill 18 scored better because A, there was less competition, and the concept was great fun. Who doesn't like base building games, right? But this is my better game overall. And in fact, I feel that this is practically commercial release. Obviously we need to take another pass at some of the UI stuff and whatever. And it's one of those things where obviously you'd actually have to spend 4 or 5 months just tweaking and cleaning everything up. But it's very actually close to. I would not be ashamed putting this up on Steam as an early access game. At all. At all. And this is a game I put together in 48 hours. And that's why this legitimately is my favorite entry ever for Ludum Dare. And if I can get something that's half as good as this one this time around, I will be very pleased with myself. No idea what's going to happen. Anyway, this video's gone on long enough. I'm not going to talk about the themes after all, because it's gone on too long and my voice is tired. If you want to see a theme discussion, then you'll just have to tune into the live stream, starting probably around 8 p.m. Eastern time. Check the description box down below. There'll be a countdown timer for the appropriate time, and we will talk about these different themes together. Thanks for watching, folks. See you next time.